case with this talk. I figured I'd put myself out there, take a risk, rather than having it. I could have said, will augmented reality make money obsolete? But I figured I would just take the strong case. So by the end of this talk, you can just hand me all your money because you'll all be convinced that you don't need it anymore. So where I want to start with this is that we're all trying to see the future. We're all looking to be in this space. We're excited by it. There's different things we're into. And that is difficult to do. The future is unknowable. We can't tell. I kind of have a funny story, which I was debating relating, but I think I'll relate it anyway. When I was a kid, I was at the fair with my dad. And there's this big spinning wheel. It's going around and around. And my dad says, "Hey, place a bet on it. Pick one of the numbers." And I was like, "Well, I'm not sure which one I'm going to pick." And he's going, "Pick the one with this toy. It's going to stop on this toy." And I'm like, "Well, I don't think it's going to stop on that. I think it's going to stop on these tickets for some concert." And he's like, "Oh, that's no good. You're not even old enough for that." And sure enough, it ended up stopping on the one that I picked. And him and the carnier are looking at me like, "Why'd you pick that one that was like, it wasn't something you wanted? And how'd you know?" And I was like, "I don't know. It was just that's where it was going to stop." So as a maybe as an eerily prescient kid, that you can get away with that, but most of us are taking, what was the takeaway from that in my mind is my dad was like wanting to place a bet on something he saw as attainable that he wanted. But the reality of the future was that it wasn't necessarily headed in that direction. And I think the lesson for us is we need to look at how this world we're in, how what we do in it, how the directions the world is taking are not necessarily the ones we want it to take. I see technology as a mediator. Technology is a we use technologies, we use tools to help us thrive. Augmented reality is a tool. It's going to help us see the world better. It's going to help us engage with the world better. Money is also just a tool. It's a way for us to assign values to things, a way for us to kind of see through walls. In my mind, that's kind of the starting point of a comparison between augmented reality and money itself. Trying to answer what money is a difficult question. I don't want to dwell too much on that. But money has some interesting properties. I was at a conference recently called The Future of Money with Heather Vesant and, oddly enough, Danger Ranger from Burning Man. And you have these two people with two very different points of view. And what Heather said that was interesting to me was she said money is a cultural encoding of value, that you can really only transact with other people in the same culture or community as you. And if you take dollars to Burning Man and you try to spend dollars to get what you want, you're kind of missing the point of Burning Man, right? Money is kind of poison in that environment. So what we fail to realize is we're so imbued in this space of dollar bills and transactional functional transactions that we don't realize that it's a subjective thing. It's a cultural thing, and there are places where you cannot spend money. And what I also learned from that was that money is a system that's under attack. It actually doesn't have a very good mapping to our real world in some respects. We value things that are not necessarily the most valuable things in our world. Money, in a way, hides value. And money is quite old as a technology. Money is a lens through which we can see the world. It's a way for us to score, estimate, attach value to. But it's a lens that is kind of a bit disassociating from where real value is, and some of the environmental issues we're facing are a result of that. What's interesting to me when I think of money as a way to see value is that I start to look at it similar to augmented reality. Augmented reality is also a way we're going to be able to see value. We're going to be able to kind of have social network filters being applied to our world, scoring the things around us, telling us that this local bakery or this local park is very special and that this is something that we should cherish. And it's a different kind of mapping. It's a more literal mapping. And when I see that, when I see those two things compared to each other, I start to see how the role that one plays may be diminished in favor of the others. And just briefly, at this conference, one of the things I really saw that was interesting is that money wasn't the only currency. There are many other currencies bubbling underneath, waiting to have visibility, but they're not very visible. We can't see them. We don't have a way to connect to them. So I'm going to jump a bit to augmented reality now. when I was at Park, one of the problems that we were trying to solve was trying to take someone in the field who's a non-expert and give them the expertise to solve a problem. So you're trying to refix a car, or you're at an oil refinery trying to, replace a drill bit, and the expert's far away. And what the possibility of augmented reality allows is us to kind of, teleport our expertise, to kind of zoom in and swarm on problems. It was something that Ben had commented on this morning, which I thought was a very succinct. The observation was that this act of swarming can kind of replace the transactional dynamics. Rather than giving someone some money and giving them your car and saying, fix this, you kind of have an opportunity to participate, learn, and become enriched and maybe repay the favor in a more subtle way. Along the same line, I went to another money-related conference called Creative Currency. And this was focused on downtown South of Market area in San Francisco, how to help really poor people who are outside of the system participate. My friend Chach and I made a game called Lemonopoly, and lets you participate in the lemon economy. So you find and share lemon trees, and you get real lemons. And it's a very focused kind of alternative currency. But we saw it as a way to kind of try and take places around us and make those places really special and really valuable and make them really visible. We were trying to play with an idea of a kind of Kickstarter for places. How do you take something that isn't valued and make it into something that's really cherished? And form an alternative currency around it, a kind of community currency that's not necessarily liquid, but that is valuable. And I can imagine in an augmented reality world, you're walking around, downtown, and you see all of these opportunities to participate in these alternative currencies that you might otherwise not have seen before. And one other example, which I just thought was really neat, I was in Golden Gate Park and I ran into a guy, and his job was daylighting streams. So he was trying to recruit a bunch of people to help dig out a creek bed and build a frog pond so that could become an above ground stream that had been subterranean. And part of his challenge was signaling to everyone around him to make that place visible, and then attracting people who could then invest in that and then kind of reap a slow, long reward from it. So I'm going to skip this whole slide. What I really think is interesting is that in personal transactions, if you're with your family or with your friends, you don't really use money. In a sense, money is this placeholder you use outside of those really close, intimate connections. And what happens when you really know your place, and when your place really knows you, is there's this opportunity to use other kinds of payment systems, other kinds of ways of transacting or building credits and debts. And it seems to me that augmented reality can help surface those alternatives and can help us see better. And when I think about the plasticity of the world and how we connect to the world, I don't think augmented reality is just going to be a layer on top of the world. It's going to change how we interact with it. And with respect to value and our attention and payment systems, I see it as possibly replacing what we think of as money today. And that's my talk. Thanks. Any questions?
So, does this work? Okay. So, I don't know if it actually works. Hello. Anyway, so my question is, it seems like, I think that you have some interesting ideas on how, if we all had full awareness of different capabilities, we could sort of not need to use currency, and we could actually just share those different, capabilities or skills or information, whatever it might be. But how do you think that scales to, like, for example, an organization level? Because I think at an individual level we could learn that, but when it comes to an organization, where maybe the organization is not really, it's more of a one-way street, maybe, right? Maybe the organization is really only creating a product, and so they're not really, they need to have a lot of people helping them, but they're not necessarily giving anything back to those people. Mm-hmm. How could you maybe scale it?
Yeah, it's hard to say. You're talking about this. On the one hand, there's this idea of a fluid, fickle, dynamic kind of future world where people are wandering around, just picking up things and interacting directly with direct transactions. On the other hand, you have this corporate idea of producing a product and extracting wealth from the market for that product. And I see corporations as kind of tribal in a way. You have a corporation can be kind of like a tribe, and a bunch of people interacting together. It may very well be that on the inside, there's a tribal aspect. I was hearing about Valve and how they work on the inside, how there's no real structure. And perhaps on the outside, you're still using money to transact with external systems. So it is a strong argument to say money will go away. And I'm taking that position because I think it's a fun thought experiment. I certainly see the recourse to money as sometimes being a failure. When you have to recourse to using dollars and you're forced in that position, that seems like it's sometimes a failure. I find myself sometimes forced into that posture. I need a ladder right now, or I need to find a way to pay for this thing. And I often wonder, if I knew that system better, if I could work that system better, if I could work around the need to use a recourse to dollars. I don't know how it works in a corporate sense when you're trying to extract wealth, but I do think that we can see hedges or walls around non-money systems that maybe have money systems on the outside and such like.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, I can have a question. I started about 4 companies in Baltimore, and they were all kind of like radical leftist organizations that eventually started to need money. And so we got them in the black and whatnot. But the issue is that, yeah, you can say, okay, well, I've got like my 12 workers, right? I figured out how to house them. I figured out how to like get food around because it's a cafe. I figured out how to like get the books around because it's a bookstore. And I've got a connection with another group that's got a bicycle collective, and they're all kind of working together. But yeah, it's a failure, as you said. And when you're like, oh, well, but I can't pay for your trip to New York because we don't have a trip to New York group. And so it brought to mind really for me the concept of money and where its real strength is in its liquidity, right? And as it moves further and further away from a commodity like gold coins and into like dollar bills, which are kind of useless, and then finally into like credit cards where there's absolutely no commodity being moved whatsoever. Like that's where money's strength seems.
There's 2 points there. Liquidity is good and bad, right? Large concentrations of money can be used as hammers to hurt us. So money is anonymous and detached from value. If money had accountability in history, if it was smart, you could say, here's some dollars that cannot be spent on killing kids in Iraq, right? So this anonymity of the current currency systems is a concern. And another thing is that money, the idea of investments and pooling large amounts of money, that wasn't really our game initially. It was really a game for the wealthy. There's new laws coming into place now which are going to allow smaller investors to do group investments. An example is if you look at the slow money movement and you look at the Gather restaurant over in Berkeley, it has 100 people funding it. And their dividend, they have a long-term payout expectation. But their dividend in the short term is that, hey, it's our restaurant. Let's invite our friends over. It's our place. And so it's like Kickstarter campaigns. You don't really expect to get a cash out of a Kickstarter, right? So we're seeing a shift where there are pragmatic ways to invest and maybe get money out with some of the changes in laws. There's a new company called Cloud Funded that's like a Kickstarter with an ROI. It's very interesting. I do see the idea of money kind of moving, the way that money plays at the high level among the wealthy, kind of moving down to be more civic and more democratic. But I don't think we were really interested in an ROI. We were just interested in funding and kind of maintaining. And money for us is, I think, very different. And so I'm looking at that role. So anyway, is that it? Okay.
Any more questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thanks.